The town of San Mateo was the kind of place where nothing ever seemed to change. A small church stood at its center, its stone walls cracked by time, and its bell ringing every Sunday morning. The cafe on the corner opened before sunrise. Farmers drove the same dusty roads their fathers had driven before them. Life moved slowly there. But for Daniel, the quiet had become heavy. 2 years earlier, his wife had died without warning. One ordinary evening, she was laughing in the kitchen, and by morning she was gone. Since that day, Daniel had lived for only one reason. His daughter, 7-year-old Sophia. She was the light in the house that grief had darkened. Daniel worked long hours in his small garage, fixing engines and patching rusted frames, then returned home to cook dinner and help with homework. But when Sophia fell asleep, the silence returned. Those were the hours Daniel dreaded most. On one autumn evening, Sophia came home from school pale and quiet. "Daddy, I feel cold," she said. By midnight, the fever had climbed dangerously high. Daniel wrapped her in a blanket and carried her to his truck. The nearest hospital was nearly an hour away. Outside, thunder rolled across the hills. Rain began to fall. Daniel started the engine and pulled onto the empty road. He drove carefully at first, one hand steady on the wheel while the other reached back to touch Sophia's arm. "I'm right here," he said softly. The storm grew stronger. Wind pushed against the truck. Rain hammered the windshield so hard the wipers struggled to keep up. And halfway across the dark stretch of road between towns, the truck sputtered. Once, twice. Then the engine died. The truck rolled to a stop beside a wide empty field. For a moment, Daniel just sat there, listening to the rain. The truck sat silent on the empty road. Rain poured from the sky, turning the fields into dark rivers of mud. Lightning flashed across the hills, illuminating the lonely stretch of highway for a split second before darkness swallowed it again. Daniel turned the key. The engine clicked once. Nothing. He tried again. The same dry, hopeless sound. In the back seat, Sophia stirred weakly beneath the blanket. "Daddy?" she whispered. Daniel forced his voice to stay calm. "I'm here, sweetheart." But inside, panic was beginning to rise. The hospital was still miles away. There was no signal on his phone. No houses nearby. Just open farmland and the storm. Daniel stepped out into the rain and lifted the hood. Steam hissed from somewhere deep in the engine. Water dripped down his face as he stared helplessly at the tangled metal. He had fixed thousands of engines in his life. But tonight, nothing made sense. The storm roared across the open fields. The road behind him and the road ahead remained completely empty. Daniel leaned against the truck and closed his eyes. "I don't know what to do," he whispered. For years he had stopped praying. Not because he hated God, but because silence had followed every prayer after his wife died. But tonight, with his daughter burning with fever in the back seat, something inside him finally broke. He looked up into the rain. "Please help us." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the wind softened. The rain was still falling, but more gently now, like the storm itself had taken a slow breath. Daniel wiped water from his eyes and turned back toward the truck, and froze. A woman was standing beside the driver's door. He had not heard footsteps. He had not seen headlights. She was simply there. She wore a long pale cloak that moved softly in the wind. Her dark hair rested loosely over her shoulders, untouched by the storm. Her face was calm, not curious, not alarmed, just calm. Daniel stepped closer cautiously. "I didn't see you walk up," he said. "I came when you asked," the woman replied quietly. Her voice was gentle, but it carried through the rain as if the storm itself had stepped aside. Daniel blinked. "I asked." She looked toward the truck, toward Sophia. Then she stepped forward and placed her hand lightly on the edge of the open hood. "Try the engine again," she said. Daniel hesitated, but something in her voice made him obey. He climbed into the driver's seat, turned the key, and the engine roared back to life. Daniel stared at the dashboard, stunned. When he stepped back outside, the woman was standing beside the rear door of the truck, looking gently at Sophia through the window. "She will be all right," the woman said. Daniel felt something strange in his chest. Not fear, something deeper. "Who are you?" he asked slowly. The woman turned toward him. Her eyes carried a warmth that felt older than the storm, older than the road, older than the town itself. "I am a mother," she said softly. A distant roll of thunder faded into the hills, and the rain began to stop. For a moment, Daniel couldn't move. The truck engine was running again. The storm that had seemed so violent only minutes before was already beginning to weaken. Rain still fell, but now it was lighter, drifting across the windshield in thin streaks instead of heavy sheets. Daniel stepped closer to the woman. Up close, there was nothing unusual about her appearance. No glow, no strange light surrounding her. Just a calm presence that made the night feel quieter. "You fixed the truck?" Daniel asked, still trying to understand what had happened. "I did not fix it," the woman replied gently. She glanced toward the back seat where Sophia lay beneath the blanket. "I only helped you continue your journey." Daniel looked through the window. Sophia's breathing had slowed. The tight lines of fever that had strained her face earlier now seemed softer. "She was very sick," Daniel said quietly. "She was afraid," the woman answered. Daniel hesitated. "Will she be okay?" The woman nodded once. "Yes." The certainty in her voice felt stronger than any doctor's reassurance. Lightning flickered far away over the hills, but the storm was clearly moving on. Daniel leaned against the truck door, studying her. "You said you came when I asked," he said slowly. "But I didn't ask anyone." The woman met his eyes with a patient expression. "You did." Daniel remembered the moment beside the truck. The rain, the fear, the words he had whispered without thinking. "Please help us." His chest tightened. "Why would anyone listen to me?" he asked. The woman's expression softened even more. A father asking for his child is never ignored. The words struck him deeply. Daniel glanced toward Sophia again, then back at the woman. Something about her felt familiar, though he could not explain why. "Have we met before?" he asked. The woman smiled gently. "In many ways." The wind moved softly across the empty road now. The storm clouds were breaking apart above them, revealing thin gaps of starlight. Daniel opened his mouth to ask another question, but Sophia stirred. "Daddy," she murmured weakly. Daniel hurried to the back door and opened it. "I'm here," he said. Her eyes opened slightly. "The lady said I'm going to be okay," Sophia whispered. Daniel's heart skipped. "What lady?" Sophia pointed weakly toward the front of the truck. Daniel turned. The road was empty. The woman was gone. No footsteps in the mud. No distant figure walking into the fields. Just the quiet night and the hum of the engine. Daniel slowly closed the door and climbed back behind the wheel. As he drove toward the hospital, the storm disappeared completely behind him. The sky ahead was clearing, and somewhere deep in his chest, the fear that had gripped him earlier had begun to loosen. Not because the future was suddenly certain, but because, for the first time in years, he felt like someone had heard him. By the time Daniel reached the hospital, the rain had stopped completely. The storm clouds that had covered the sky earlier were already breaking apart, revealing a faint line of morning light along the horizon. He carried Sophia through the hospital doors while nurses rushed forward to help. Within minutes, she was in a small room with warm lights and quiet machines softly humming. A doctor examined her carefully. Daniel waited beside the bed, his heart still racing from the night. After several long minutes, the doctor turned toward him. "The fever is dropping," she said. Daniel blinked. "Dropping?" "Yes," the doctor replied. "Whatever was happening seems to have already passed its worst point." Daniel looked down at Sophia. Her breathing was calm now. The tension in her small face had faded. She opened her eyes and smiled weakly. "I told you," she whispered. "The lady said I'd be okay." Daniel sat slowly in the chair beside her bed. "The lady?" "The one outside the truck," Sophia said. "She told me not to be scared." Daniel felt a chill move through him. "You saw her?" Sophia nodded. She had kind eyes. Daniel looked toward the hospital window where the first light of morning was spreading across the fields. For the rest of the day, Sophia rested while doctors continued to monitor her. By evening, her fever had completely broken. They were allowed to go home the next morning. The storm had washed the world clean. As Daniel drove back along the same road where the truck had stopped, the sky above the hills was clear and bright. When he reached the empty stretch of highway beside the field, he slowed the truck. The road looked ordinary again. No sign of the storm. No footprints. No trace of the woman who had appeared in the rain. But Daniel didn't feel confused anymore. He simply sat there for a moment, looking across the open land. Sophia leaned forward from the back seat. "Daddy?" "Yes." "That was the Virgin Mary, wasn't it?" Daniel didn't answer right away. He thought about the calm voice in the storm, the hand resting on the engine, the words spoken with quiet certainty. A mother. Finally, he smiled softly. "Maybe it was," he said. Sophia nodded like that was the most natural thing in the world. Daniel started the truck again and continued toward home. The road stretched peacefully ahead of them. And somewhere beyond the hills, beyond the storms and the quiet towns of the world, a mother still watched over those who whispered desperate prayers into the night. Not always with miracles that change everything, but sometimes with something even greater. A quiet answer, arriving when hope seems lost.